I never imagined a single fried EGG could change a millionaire CEO's heart forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was bright and clear, yet I felt an ominous cloud hovering over me. I stood in the bustling kitchen of the company cafeteria, my hands trembling as I cracked the shell open. Bright yellow yolk spilled out like molten gold, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. This was no ordinary breakfast. No, this was a turning point that my heart raced. I was just a lowly kitchen staff member, watching the executives come and go, their laughter echoing through the sleek stainless steel kitchen. Each day felt like a struggle, trying to make ends meet with my meager paycheck. My family depended on me. But that day, I sensed something was off. As I flipped the egg, the sizzle broke the silence. It was loud against the ambient noise, voices high-pitched with laughter, the bustling of trays being stacked, the clattering of forks and knives all faded away. I looked up and spotted him across the room, Jonathan Reed, the CEO, draped in an expensive suit, brows furrowed deep. He rarely ever smiled, a titan of industry, a man whose gaze could chill the warmest hearts. His eyes met mine for a split second, and an inexplicable shiver ran down my spine. What would cause a man like him to be here in the heart of the kitchen, amidst the chaos, instead of perched high in his office with a view? Was he here for a purpose, or just rare curiosity? As I turned back to my cooking, my palms sweaty, I assumed it was just another day, until I dropped the salt. A cascade of white crystals poured onto the sizzling egg, everyone fell silent. It was a mistake, a disaster waiting to unfold, and all eyes were on me. I glanced helplessly at the egg, now swimming in a sea of salt, the delicate moment becoming something surreal. Would he laugh? Would he scold me? Without warning, he stepped forward, the crowd parting like the Red Sea, his presence commanding the room. "That's an ambitious seasoning choice," he quipped, a hint of amusement dancing in his usually steely voice. Laughter erupted around us, and I felt a rush of heat flood my cheeks. Just like that, he had turned my blunder into a moment of levity, but instead of walking away, he lingered. I could see the obscured depth behind his laughter, a man weary beneath his layers of success. "You should come work for me," he said, almost as an afterthought, as if not comprehending the weight of his words. My heart jumped. There, sifting through soiled dishes and fried eggs, lay the first thread of possibility. Yet, the doubt settled in. What did he see in me? My life was a patchwork of failures and hopes, a bold dash against a canvas of gray. Would I fit in his world of wealth and responsibility? The unspoken question hung heavy in the air, what would sacrificing my life look like? And just like that, he turned, dissipating the moment, laughter echoing behind him. The casualness of his invitation carved deep into me, leaving a crack that widened with every heartbeat. I could hardly breathe. What if I could break free from this fading kitchen? What if I failed him? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind, each morning beginning with the same cacophony of sizzling pans and chatter, yet my heart carried the heaviness of uncertainty. I replayed Jonathan's words over and over again, a mantra mingled with both hope and trepidation. "You should come work for me." The phrase danced mockingly in my mind. I returned to the kitchen each day, the rhythm of the crew pulsing around me, cooking and cleaning as if trapped in a cycle that tightened its grip with every new dawn. The other staff members perhaps sensed my distraction. They would glance my way, eyes glimmering with a mix of sympathy and curiosity. I could almost hear their silent questions: why was I still here? Why not take the leap? But reality was heavy, weighted down not just by the lingering taste of fear, but by the lives of those depending on me. I would steal moments to ponder, staring out the small kitchen window and losing myself in the view of the city beyond the lofty towers, reflecting dreams and aspirations, glimmering just out of reach. One afternoon, just as I was leaving work, my heart raced as I spotted Jonathan outside, pacing near the entrance with an intensity one had never seen. The sight of him, untethered from the polished veneer of his office, sparked a flurry of emotions within me. Snapping into a different gear, I hesitated, half a step inside the doors. "Is everything all right?" I asked, unable to contain my surprise. My voice must have caught him off guard, for he turned sharply, surprise melting into something softer. "Just thinking," he replied, his expression tearing down some of the walls he surrounded himself with. The vulnerability there struck me. Even titans of industry had their burdens. "Want to talk?" "I mean, if it's okay," I stumbled through my words, uncharacteristically bold in that moment. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, and then he nodded slowly, an invitation hidden in that small gesture. We moved away from the busy crowd, finding a quiet corner of the building where the echoes of chatter faded. The air felt charged with the promise of revelation, yet wrapped in uncertainty. "That I don't usually share my burdens," he confessed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture of exhaustion coupled with desperation. "But, this weight sometimes it's suffocating." That I listened, encapsulated by his words. He spoke of pressures, of the decisions that dictated the lives of countless workers beneath him. Every choice carried heavy consequences: layoffs, restructuring, product failures. I found myself nodding sympathetically, realizing that our worlds, though apart, intersected in unimaginable ways. Chaos mirrored chaos, success weighed down by self-doubt. "Sometimes, I wish there were simpler choices," he admitted, eyes clouded with something almost childlike: longing, perhaps, for times unencumbered by responsibility. At that moment, I understood a piece of his heart, one tarnished by the weight of expectations. "I could help," I blurted out before thinking, words spilling forth like the egg, raw, uncertain, yet full of promise. "If you hired me, I could lighten your load somehow. I just want to help." He regarded me quietly, searching my face as if looking for something deeper. "You think so?" His tone was light but layered, skepticism woven into the folds of his voice. "It's not just about cooking or serving. It's about strategy, decisions that could impact lives." "That I know that," I replied, finding my footing with newfound resolve. "But maybe something as small as a meal can change someone's day. I want to be part of that. If you give me a chance, I promise you won't regret it." A slow smile broke through the cracks of his guarded demeanor, and for a moment, the distance vanished. I felt the connection tighten, a bond forged from our vulnerability, the chaotic threads of our lives weaving together. But just as hope began to swell within me, his phone buzzed, shattering the fragile moment. Frowning, he glanced at the screen, then back at me, his eyes betraying a glimpse of annoyance, maybe even dread. I have to take this," he murmured, distancing himself from our shared connection. Just like that, the sparkle vanished, replaced with the harshness of immediate responsibility. As he turned away, my heart sank. I couldn't help but wonder if I had overstepped, if I had been foolish to reach out. But deep down, I also felt the embers of possibility glowing brighter, whispering that perhaps my life was ready for a shift. Later that night, alone in my small apartment, I sat at the kitchen table, staring down at the empty plate where my meals could have been. I couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was unfolding, yet walls of reality loomed large around me, pressing down hard. Could I truly create change, both for myself and for Jonathan? Just as I began to formulate a plan, a loud knock erupted at my door. It startled me, a rush of adrenaline sending my heart racing. Who could it be this late? As I opened the door, the world outside shifted on its axis. Standing there was a woman I barely recognized, my estranged sister, Darlene, her face marked with urgency. "You need to come with me, something terrible has happened," she gasped, her breaths coming in quick bursts. In that moment, everything I had been contemplating began to unravel. The threads of my future, glittering with hope and uncertainty, collided with the harsh reality now standing on my doorstep. My sister's appearance was a wordless promise of challenges. I couldn't have foreseen a disruption that threatened to consume everything I had been building toward, and just like that, I was thrust into a whirlwind I had not asked for, with no choice but to navigate the storm awaiting beyond my door. Stepping into the night with my sister felt like entering an entirely different world, one where shadows stretched longer and the air thrummed with foreboding. Darlene's presence, unexpected as it was, rekindled a complex mix of disbelief and resentment. Years had passed since we last spoke, years since the rift formed between us, large enough to keep entire lifetimes apart. Darlene, I began, desperate for an explanation, but her frantic movements silenced my words. She grabbed my hand, urgency etching deep lines across her forehead. "It's Mom," she said, her voice a shaky whisper that sent chills down my spine. "She's in the hospital." The breath caught in my throat, and my heart plummeted. Mom had lived with diabetes for as long as I could remember, but hearing those words made the reality far too vivid. I had been so focused on my own struggles that I had pushed thoughts of her out of my mind. What happened? Is she okay? The questions tumbled out in a rush, fueled by fear and a sense of helplessness. She collapsed. "They don't know much yet," Darlene replied, a tremor in her voice that mirrored my own anxiety. "But it's serious. Please, we have to hurry." As I followed her into the cold night, dread settled deep within me, weighing me down like stone. The hospital loomed ahead, its sterile light spilling onto the pavement, a beacon of both despair and hope. I couldn't help but wonder how we had gotten here, the distance between Darlene and me seeming more profound with every step. We had spent too long apart, cocooned in our grievances, and now it felt as if fate had thrust us back together, binding us in the crucible of impending loss. Inside the hospital, the air felt thick with tension. Quiet echoes punctuated the bustling sounds of nurses and doctors tending to their duties. Darlene led the way, her grip still tight on my hand as we navigated the maze of corridors. With every step, the familiar ache of regret twisted in my chest. What if this was my last chance to fix things with Mom? What would I say to her? As we reached the waiting room, the sight of my mother lying in a bed, fragile and pale, squeezed the breath from my lungs. Long gone was her vivacious spirit that had always filled the room with warmth and laughter. I blinked, heart racing, as Darlene hurriedly sprang into action, speaking with the nurse, her urgency reigniting both tension and fear. "Can we see her?" I asked, my voice shaky. The nurse nodded, sympathy softening her features. "Only one at a time right now." As I stepped into the small room, the beeping monitors became a haunting lullaby. My mother's frail body lay beneath the crisp white sheets, a stark contrast to the vibrant person I remembered. Kneeling beside her, I fought back tears, desperately wanting to reach out and touch her hand, yet afraid of what that connection would reveal. "Mom," I whispered, voice barely a suggestion. "It's me, it's Sarah." Her eyelids fluttered open slowly, revealing confusion and momentary brightness. "Sarah?" she rasped, and just like that, the distance melted away. "Yeah, it's me," I said, tears spilling from my eyes. "I'm here. I'm so sorry for everything." But words of forgiveness hung unspoken on the tip of my tongue, too tangled in years of anger and misunderstanding. She blinked, eyes unfocused but locking on mine, searching for recognition. "Oh, darling," she murmured, her voice barely rising above a whisper, I've missed you." In that fragile moment, something began to shift within me, the weight of the past loosening its grip. It was a small flicker, but enough to ignite the embers of hope. Just as I leaned closer, hoping to bridge the gap with the simplest gesture of love, her breathing grew labored, the sound tearing at my heart. A doctor entered, disrupting our fragile connection, his brow furrowed with concern. "Miss Hardwick, we need to stabilize her. She's going into cardiac arrest." The word struck like thunder, reverberating across the small space. A flurry of activity engulfed the room, hands moving swiftly, masks falling over faces as the doctor and nurses maneuvered around my mother's bed. I felt rooted to the spot, helpless, torn between the tumult around me and the specter of regret that loomed larger than ever. Darlene rushed in, eyes wide with fear, and the two of us clung to each other amidst the chaos. "What's happening?" she demanded, raw desperation threading through her voice. Even in that moment, time seemed to fracture, my thoughts darting to Jonathan. Our conversation felt like a distant echo now, a glimmer of possibility overshadowed by the storm raging inside me. It solidified the truth: I had always been running from my past instead of facing it, letting the struggle consume me until there was little left. Just as I fought to ground myself on this brink of a new beginning, a piercing beeping grew louder, and with it, the realization struck: time was not on our side. My mother's life hung in precarious balance, and as I took a deep breath, a new determination unfurled within me. I wouldn't let this moment pass. I would fight for her, I would fight to mend our broken bonds. But just as the doctor's voice resonated through the chaos, shattering the fray, the door to our small corner of the world swung open. A figure stepped inside, and as my heart raced with tumultuous hope and fear, I froze. It was Jonathan. His expression was one of concern, deep and fierce, as he searched the room. "What's going on?" he asked, stepping in closer, his presence grounding and strong amid the suffocating fear, and as our eyes met, I felt something shift dramatically within me. I couldn't have anticipated that this moment, tangled in trauma and unexpected compassion, would unfurl the next chapter of my life, a moment that would lead me down a winding path, fraught with revelation, heartache, and inescapable choices yet to come, forever intertwining our stories. The frantic energy of the hospital room enveloped me, yet Jonathan's presence felt like an anchor pulling me back from the overwhelming sea of anxiety. I could see the concern etched in his features, the way his brow furrowed as he assessed the chaotic scene around us. For a moment, I was grateful for his support, desperate to cling to anything that felt solid. "What's happening?" he asked again, his voice steady and low, breaking through the noise. They don't know." "Mom's in trouble," I replied, my words coming out in a flurry as a wave of emotion crashed over me. I felt the weight of those years spent apart from my family crashing down like a tidal wave, and Jonathan's eyes softened as if he could read the turmoil in my heart. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked, and for the first time that night, a thread of warmth threaded through the chill. I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope in the crippling darkness as he positioned himself beside me, his calm presence weaving a fragile thread of connection between the chaos and my fraying spirit. The doctor spoke to Darlene, his voice urgent but measured. "We're doing everything we can. I need you two to wait outside for now." I felt Darlene's body tense against me, an electric charge of dread radiating off her. A hospital gown barely concealed the shadows of her worry as she clutched my arm tightly. And as we stepped back, my thoughts raced. I imagined how small my mother felt at the heart of this storm. Did she feel the distance between us, too? Jonathan shifted closer, his arm brushing against mine, an unremarkable gesture that sent a rush of reassurance through me. I had been so lost, not just in my mother's illness but in the chaos of my own mind. "We'll be okay," he whispered, eyes steady on mine. No matter what, but I struggled to believe those words. The past loomed darkly over me like an unwelcome specter. I thought of the arguments, the silence stretched across months and years. Would Dad show up? Was my mother aware of how strained our relationship had been? As the swirling thoughts collided, a sudden realization broke through: she deserved better than this. She deserved to know she was loved, even if it was wrapped up in all those years of discomfort and misunderstanding. The waiting room felt overbearingly suffocating as silence pressed down on us, punctuated only by the distant sounds of medical machinery, a steady reminder of time slipping away. Darlene's eyes were filled with worry, a deep-seated fear that mirrored my own. "Do you think she'll be okay?" I asked, my voice laden with a mixture of hope and dread. "That I don't know." "I hope so," Darlene replied, her voice breaking just like mine. I wish we hadn't fought so much in that moment. An unfamiliar warmth spread through me. Maybe, just maybe, the universe had brought us back together for a reason. Our shared pain was a stepping stone, an unsteady bridge towards healing. A nurse eventually stepped into the waiting room, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Hardwick, we can let one visitor in again," she announced, and for a moment, the world shrank down into a single, shattering heartbeat. "Me," I said instantly, my voice unwavering despite the tremors of fear rippling underneath. I knew, deep in my core, that I needed to be the one to hold my mother now. A small smile broke on the nurse's face as she motioned for me to follow her. I squeezed Darlene's hand before letting go, hoping to draw strength from her. As I walked down the familiar corridor, I felt Jonathan's eyes on my back steady, reassuring. In the room, my mother lay still, her fragile form a stark reminder of how quickly life could change. The machines buzzed gently, like a melancholic lullaby playing for a weary soul. I approached her, every step feeling as if I was walking on glass, and I reached out, resting my hand gently on hers. "Mom," I murmured, the weight of those years flooding back. "I love you. I've always loved you." Her eyelids fluttered, and I prayed that she could hear me. I imagined the myriad conversations we never had, the words trapped behind barriers of pain. "Please, just come back to us. We need you." Tears rolled down my cheeks, and with them came the release of so many burdens. I let go of my resentment, my shame, I dispelled the need to resolve everything in an instant. Just knowing this moment existed gave me pause. Suddenly, the beeping of the monitors shifted, a deep, resonating alarm that pierced through my fragile cocoon. My heart dropped, panic grabbing hold of my throat. "What's happening?" I shouted, the world spiraling into chaos once more. Nurses rushed in as the doctor re-entered the room. I felt Jonathan's strong presence behind me, offering strength without words. In that instant, a searing realization shot through me. The fractures in my relationship with Mom were tethered to deeper wounds, not just between us, but within myself, and as they worked frantically to stabilize her, the door swung open once more. Before I could turn, I felt a familiar pulse of resentment and fear quiver beneath my skin. "What the hell are you doing here?" Darlene snapped, her voice raw and trembling. That I turned slowly, the room suddenly heavy with tension. Jonathan's presence now felt like a lifeline, yet an unexpected wave of dread washed over me. The figure that entered the room wore a crisp suit, and as he stepped forward, the air thickened with recognition and a sudden chill grew in my spine. "Dad?" I breathed, disbelief wrapping around my heart like a vice. He raised his eyes to meet mine, and in their depths, I saw a mixture of sorrow and desperation. "I've heard everything. I need to talk to both of you." A fracture within me widened, and as the world became even more tumultuous, I stood at the precipice of something deeper, more chaotic than the illness at hand. The ties that bound us were unraveling with every passing second, each breath stewed in the weight of unconfessed truths. I had no idea what to say. But as my mother's condition spiraled, I realized that the conversation we were about to have would change us all forever. The echo of those two syllables, "Dad," hung in the air, mingling with the sterile scent of antiseptic and the urgent beeping of machines. It felt surreal, as if the universe was mocking the chaos around me. My heart raced, each pulse a reminder of the emotions I had buried deep, away from prying eyes. Jonathan's steady presence loomed like a shadow beside me, an anchor in the storm as Darlene's thin frame trembled beside him. "I didn't think I would have to come here." My father's voice was thick with regret, but it also had an edge, like breaking glass. He ran a hand through his neatly styled hair, a gesture that brought a rush of memories flooding back, him standing in our kitchen, stark and imposing, as he declared whatever rule he was implementing that week. "That is this really the time?" Darlene interrupted, her voice sharp and icy. "What do you want, Dad?" There was a moment of silence, a collision of unspoken words. For all his power in business, in life, in what should have been our family, he often faltered in conveying real feelings. "I came to see your mother," he said, finally averting his gaze to the still figure in the bed. I've been distant. I know that. But I want to make things right. Make things right. The phrase irked me. What did he know about making things right? Years of silence transformed into a suffocating presence surrounding us like the dim fluorescent lights. A hollow laugh formed in my throat, nearly escaping before I swallowed it down. My mother lay on the brink of life and death, and here he was, trying to frame a moment of tragedy into a conversation about himself. What exactly do you mean by that? I asked, crossing my arms defensively as I stepped closer. Is it the I'm here because I should be kind of right? Or do you actually care? His face flushed with the embarrassment of years spent avoiding confrontation. The wealth that once defined him now felt like an anchor dragging him further into the depths of his own failures. I care, I do, he replied, the words coming out like a timid confession. But there was something in his stance, a flicker of vulnerability that caught my attention. It was a split-second admission of mortality we rarely saw from a man hounded by power and rules. And in that fleeting moment, I wondered if he was just as afraid of losing Mom as I was. Darlene shot me a look, a mixture of confusion and frustration. Her fingers were darting together, a nervous habit swiftly rekindled. This isn't about you. Mom is fighting for her life now, that's what matters. I know, Dad replied, and the lighthouse of hope flickered again within me. But this is also about mending things. We can't just pretend everything is fine anymore. Fine. The word slipped from my lips, a bitter aftertaste that lingered. You think it's fine because you sent birthday cards with checks instead of actually being there. Silence filled the room as my words settled like a heavy fog. I looked toward Mom, willing her to squeeze my hand, to reveal any sign that she could hear us. We need you now, I whispered, my voice cracking like a fragile glass. More than ever. But Mom remained still, her very breath a shallow reminder of the fight ahead. Just give her a chance, Dad said, almost pleading, as he stepped closer, his eyes darting nervously between Darlene and me. Maybe if I can talk to her. I shook my head violently. No. You can't just waltz in after all these years and act like everything will be fine if you talk to her. It doesn't magically erase the past. Suddenly, an alarming beep erupted from the machines, a sharp rattle that pierced through the heavy air. I felt my heart plummet as nurses rushed into the room. The chaos that erupted around us felt like a morbid dance, everything moving in fast forward while we remained suspended in our unresolved pain. Get out! Darlene shouted, her voice so raw and desperate it almost shook me to my core. Just get out until we can figure this out. Darlene. I began, but the resolve in her voice silenced me. Please, she continued, her body trembling. Just, leave. As my father backed away. The expression on his face was a haunting blend of hurt and disbelief. I watched him turn and leave the room, the heavy door swinging shut behind him. A tense air filled the void he left, thick with unuttered words and heavy weight. Just as the nurses began to stabilize my mother, a flicker of recognition flashed across Jonathan's features. I met his eyes, suddenly aware of the storm brewing inside me. The words I longed to speak burned behind my teeth, yet fear and sorrow held them captive. I returned to my mother's bedside, gripping her hand tightly as anxiety coursed through me. My heart was a battlefield of quickening hope and the dread of losing everything. But thin flicker in her eyelids caught my eye. I leaned in, barely breathing. Mom. I whispered urgently, my voice shaky. Can you hear me? Her fingers twitched slightly, and in that moment, it felt like a single thread of connection was forming, a fragile link between the past filled with resentment and the present that yearned for healing. The nurse looked up, her face changing as she noticed this moment of hope. Give her a moment, she urged, moving closer, as the rest of us clung to that flicker. Just then, a resounding crash echoed from down the hall. Strong voices mixed with cries rang out, drawing our attention. Something terrible was happening. In a world that felt so broken and fragmented, I suddenly wondered, would a moment of connection be enough to stitch back together the wounds of our family? Would we have the strength to face whatever lay ahead? I stared back at Mom, desperately wanting her to wake and speak. I could feel my heartbeat quickening, vibrating in tandem with the rising chaos surrounding us. How much longer could we hold on? The chaos from the hallway spilled into the room, nurses rushing to the sound of commotion, their expressions grave. My heart raced alongside the beeping machines, each sound echoing a reminder of everything we stood to lose. I watched desperately as one nurse ushered the other toward the door, her voice urgent, "Check the source, now." The moment felt like an eternity, time stretching thin as if it were another machine measuring moments lost. My grip tightened around my mother's clammy hand. I needed her to respond, to wake up, to be here with us in this chaos. "Mom, please," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. "Come back to us. We need you. I need you." The resolve that had built up in my chest was fighting against the deep well of dread that threatened to drown me as I struggled with the weight of uncertainty. Jonathan stepped closer, his brow furrowed with concern. "It's going to be okay," he said, though I sensed the tremble in his voice betraying a flicker of doubt. I wanted to believe him, but the sudden noises reverberating through the walls had robbed us of our moment of hope. The nurse re-entered, her gaze focused on the monitors, her brow crystallizing into a complex mix of concentration and urgency. "We need to keep her stable," she said, and I felt my heart drop as the severity of her tone reshaped my understanding of our situation. "Are you sure she's fighting?" Darlene's voice, once sharp, now dripped with a fragile sadness, echoed my internal plea. I turned to look at her, and for the first time, I saw her fear pierce through the armor she wore so proudly. "It's still early," the nurse said, forcing a calm that felt like taut string ready to snap. "We're optimistic, but there's a lot we cannot control. She needs rest and the right environment. Is there a way to communicate with her? Something that could bring her back to us?" My desperation was palpable, a wave crashing over me, and I felt Jonathan's hand on my shoulder, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. "There are many ways," the nurse murmured. "Sometimes hearts can hear what words cannot." The words hung in the air like a fragile thread, but I latched onto the small flicker of hope that bloomed inside me. If I couldn't reach her with my words, perhaps I could reach her by bringing together the pieces of our family. I thought of the old family recipes Mom used to make, how she poured love into each dish, how our kitchen once filled with laughter and stories. I stood up abruptly, glancing at Darlene. "That's it. The eggs. She used to love the way you made fried eggs on Sunday mornings." It was something simple, but it brought us all together. Darlene blinked in surprise. "What are you talking about?" "The eggs. If we can recreate those moments, maybe it could reach her somewhere deep." I felt a surge of determination pulling me away from dwelling in sorrow. "We need the smell of home, something familiar." Jonathan's eyes lit up with understanding as he nodded. "I can find a way to get the things we need from the cafe downstairs." "Let's do this together," but we can't leave her," Darlene protested, her voice trembling. "I'll stay," I insisted. "I'll talk to her, and when you come back just like before." I turned to the nurse with determination ignited in my heart. "We need to try. Please, give us this chance." The nurse hesitated, considering my plea, her eyes softening ever so slightly. "It's unconventional, but maybe it could help. Just keep your voices calm and your energy positive. She'll sense it." Once they left, I was alone with my mother, an aisle of stark contrast in a room that felt increasingly dark and cold. The machines beeped in a steady rhythm, but in that moment, I didn't focus on their clinical sounds. I leaned over her, placing my cheek against her still hand. "Mom, if you can hear me, we're coming back. Just be strong for us, okay?" I closed my eyes, letting memories roll in here, laughter, her gentle smile, those moments shared over breakfast as the sunlight poured in, filling our home with warmth. "I miss you, Mom. Remember the Friday nights when we watched old movies? You always hated the scary ones but stayed next to me anyway. I need you back." But everything remained unresponsive. A flicker of doubt began to creep back in, clawing at the edges of my hope. Just as I was about to crumble into my darkest thoughts, the door swung wide open, and in walked a nurse with news that would spiral my emotions into a chaotic storm. "Can you step outside for a moment?" I hesitated, confusion clouding my mind. "Why?" "There's something you need to know. There's been a development." My stomach turned, dread clawing its way up my throat. What sort of development? Please, just step outside. But before I could muster a response, Jonathan and Darlene rushed in, eyes wide, faces drawn. What's happening? What did they say? The weight of their questions pressed down on me, thicker than the air I breathed. I stepped cautiously toward the door, and dread slinked along my spine. What could be happening? As I crossed the threshold, I braced myself for a revelation that could change everything. Your father is in the building, the nurse said slowly, her expression grave. He needs to talk to you. My breath caught in my throat as 1,000 emotions collided at once. How could he show up now? When I needed my mother. Where? I managed to whisper, my world fracturing yet again. Just down the hall. But please, this may complicate things. And with that, clarity washed over me as uncertainty tangled like a wilted vine. Would my father be the answer, the key to unlocking our past? Or would he twist the knife deeper, drawing out the wounds that desperately clung to the surface of our family's troubled legacy? I felt Jonathan's hand on my back, urging me forward. You don't have to do it alone, he said. But as we moved toward the sound of my father's approaching footsteps, a sense of dread enveloped me. Whispers of shattered dreams and heartbreak danced on the edges of my consciousness. What awaited us just beyond those familiar walls full of unfamiliar emotions? Would the spiral of our family's story lead to healing, or would it plunge us deeper into despair? My heart raced as I reached for the doorknob, ready to face whatever was waiting on the other side, the final thread holding our family together, or perhaps a new beginning destined to tear us apart. The hallway felt colder as I approached the door, a chill that seeped into my bones and clung tightly to the edges of my resolve. My father's presence loomed large in our family's history, both as a source of comfort and as a vortex of pain that had often threatened to pull us all apart. I paused for a breath, my heart hammering in my chest as I glanced back at Jonathan and Darlene. Their faces mirrored my own turmoil, an uneasy alliance of hope and dread. Are you ready? Jonathan asked softly, his eyes searching mine for answers I didn't have. I wanted to nod, to convince myself that this was just the beginning of something new, but the tremor in my hands told a different story. As I turned the doorknob, I felt the weight of unspoken words pressing down on us. The door creaked open, and there he was, my father, older, wearier, and yet somehow still the man I had fought against and longed for in equal measure. His face was drawn, the familiar creases of worry deepening his expression, and I couldn't help but notice the stark contrast to the man I recalled from my childhood. Hello, sweetheart, he said, his voice gravelly but warm. He took a hesitant step toward me, and for a brief moment, it felt like a lifetime of distances had vanished. Yet, just beneath that warmth, a shadow lingered, an unspoken truth that had driven our family apart. Why are you here? I asked, my heart pounding. Mom's not doing well, and my being here doesn't change that, he interrupted, his eyes darting away as if he couldn't bear the gravity of my words. I came to see you. I heard about the accident. It's not just an accident, Dad, it's her life, I replied sharply, the hurt bubbling to the surface. And you think showing up now will fix anything? He flinched as if I had struck him. I know that timing is not great. But I need you to listen to me. His voice cracked, and I could feel the weight of his sincerity laced through his words. With a reluctant nod, I stepped further into the room, needing to establish a line of safety between my heart and the uncertainty laid bare between us. What is it? I've made mistakes, so many of them. With your mother, with you. And I'm sorry. I want to make amends, he began, but I could see the struggle behind his eyes, the hesitation that came from a man who had known pride and now grappled with regret. What does that even mean, Dad? My voice trembled as I struggled to contain the emotions swirling inside me. You just walk in and expect everything to be okay. You left us when we needed you. How do you think that makes any of this better? Just let me explain, he pleaded, stepping closer. I've been living with my decisions for years. I never stopped thinking about you too, about your mother. I want to help, if you'll let me. Help with what? My fists clenched tightly at my sides, fury battling with a deep-rooted sorrow. You think showing up after all this time will erase the hurt? It doesn't work that way. My voice cracked, each word punctuated by the weight of years lost. That he opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, just like that, my mother's fate, suspended like a gossamer thread, brought everything to a halt. The beeping from the machines blared in the distance, each sound a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the love that existed within our fragmented family. Your mother is fighting, but she needs our family. She loved the way you and I used to cook together. That always brought her joy, he said, voice trembling. I know it's late, but you know where we stood before this. You can't just come back and pretend like everything is fine, I shot back, bitterness simmering underneath the surface. We were never enough for you, and now you expect her to start believing that you care. In that heated moment, a new wave of compassion surged from somewhere deep within me, battling the anger I'd harbored for so long. What do you want me to do? I want to fight for her, not for you. The honesty of my words hung in the air, raw and painful. Then help me help her. If we can show her she's not alone, he faltered, swallowing hard as if the weight of his own choices was suffocating him. How? I whispered, the desperation in his voice slinking through the cracks of my fortified heart. Let's bring her home together. I'll make sure we recreate the warmth she loves. A flicker of hope shone in his eyes, mingling uncertainly with the shadow of our shared history. Just as I was about to respond, Jonathan stepped forward, breaking through the storm that raged within me. I know she'd love that, but I can't help but wonder if we can trust him to follow through, he said, addressing my father directly with a cautious intensity. My father nodded, understanding the weight of that question. You have every right to doubt me. But give me a chance to prove I can be present for her, for both of you. I promise I'll do everything I can. The painful truth of the moment settled like dust around us, and I struggled to find my footing in this emotional sandstorm we found ourselves in. The prospect of dragging my father's fragmented promises back into our lives felt like both a betrayal and a glimmer of hope, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe under the weight of it all. Then, a noise from the hallway broke the silence, a soft cry, almost like a whisper that caught my attention. My heart raced as I turned toward the door, the rhythmic beeping of machines fading momentarily from my thoughts. I caught the slightest glimpse of Darlene, her eyes wide with fright, as she rushed into the room. Something's happened. She gasped, breathless. The nurses, it's about your mom. Tension coiled around us like a thick fog, and in that moment, uncertainty grabbed hold. My heart hammered as I whirled back to my father, ready to face whatever awaited us. But I couldn't shake the tightening grip of fear that began to tighten around my chest once again. Would this new development tear us further apart, or could it finally begin to mend the fragmented pieces of our broken family? I felt Jonathan's hand slip into mine, grounding me as we stared at my father, each of us caught in our own web of fear. And the possibilities stretched wide between us like a chasm awaiting closure or calamity. I took a deep breath, heart racing with anticipation. Whatever was coming, it was about to change everything again. The hospital corridors glowed with an unsettling brightness, fluorescent lights flickering against the stark white walls. With each hurried step I took beside Jonathan, my heart thudded wildly, syncing with the anxious beeping of machines resonating in my mind. The moment Darlene had burst through that door, her voice laced with urgency, felt like a jolt of electricity surging through my veins. What do you mean something happened? I pressed, trying to keep my voice steady while dread hung heavily in the air. Darlene's eyes were wide, glistening with unshed tears. Your mom, she's not stable. They want you to come quickly. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, causing my breath to hitch. I cast a glance back at my father, who stood on the periphery, expression shadowed in uncertainty, as if the specter of his past weighed him down. My mind was a tumult of emotions. We had been teetering on a fragile thread of hope, and now it felt like everything was about to unravel. Jonathan squeezed my hand tighter, as if sensing the tremors that coursed through me. Stay close, he murmured, guiding me towards the nurse's station like a steady anchor amidst a stormy sea of worry. As we approached, I could see the grim expressions on the nurses' faces. The efficiency in their movements did little to alleviate the growing sense of panic swirling within me. Your mother's breathing is becoming irregular. We're stabilizing her now, but it is critical that you see her, one of the nurses said, her voice calm yet imbued with the gravity of the situation. I nodded, more because I needed to hear the words than because they eased my fears. The nurse guided us past the double doors that led into the intensive care unit, and as I stepped inside, my breath caught in my throat. There she was, my mother, with tubes snaking around her like veins of life desperately trying to keep her tethered to this world. Her frail figure lay against the stark white sheets, a frailty I had never seen before, and my heart shattered. The sight of her brought back the sweetest memories, her laughter echoing in the kitchen, her gentle hand brushing my hair away from my face, and her eyes, bright and full of love. "Mom," I breathed, my voice cracking as I approached her bedside. I had imagined this moment countless times, but never had I envisioned it would be shrouded in this kind of sorrow. She looked so small, so lost. Jonathan's presence seemed to wrap around me like a protective cocoon as we both took in the reality of her condition. The warmth of his hand was a reminder that I wasn't alone, a fleeting but essential comfort in the face of impending loss. Is she going to be okay? Darlene's voice trembled from behind me, breaking through the haze of my thoughts. All I could do was shake my head, blinded by tears that stung my eyes. In that moment, the reality of our family's disarray pressed upon me like a weight too burdensome to bear. The beeping of the machines changed pitch, and I felt a cold wave of panic wash over me. I stepped closer, my fingers entwining with her frail ones, my touch trembling. "Please, don't leave us," I whispered, pouring all my love, my fears, and my regrets into those 3 words. In that moment, the door swung open and my father stepped inside, his presence casting a shadow over the fragile hope that dimmed in the sterile room. He glanced at my mother, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than conflict in his eyes, genuine worry, and perhaps a taste of understanding, the kind that could only blossom in the face of vulnerability. "Is it true?" he asked as he approached, his voice softening. "Is she really?" His words dangled in the air, the heady weight of sorrow binding us together in shared anguish. "I don't know," I replied harshly, the frustration surging again. "You haven't been here. You don't understand what it's like to feel your family unravel." My heart raced with the urge to push him away, to shield my mother from the man whose absence had contributed to this crucible of pain. "I know," he said quietly, eyes fixed on my mother. "But I want to be here now. I want to support you, both of you," he added, motioning to Darlene and Jonathan. I wanted to scream, to push him back to the fringes from where he'd come. But before I could react, the monitors began to beep more erratically. A flood of medical staff rushed in, the room erupting into a chaotic flurry of white coats and masks. "Everyone out now," a nurse called out, and within moments, Jonathan grasped my hand, leading me away even as I fought against him, intent on staying. "No. I need to be with her," I protested, clawing for the intimacy of my mother's presence, where it felt safe, even in its disrepair. "We have to give them space," Jonathan whispered urgently. "We can't help her from in there." The weight of helplessness clung around me as we retreated to the waiting area, my heart wrenching with every step. The sterile air felt suffocating, darkening with uncertainty, and I scarcely noticed when Darlene slid into a seat beside me, her face pale with worry. What if she started? But the words never made it out. Tears brimmed in her eyes, and the silence of fear enveloped us. Then, just as my thoughts delved deeper into despair, a figure emerged from the shadows, an unexpected glimmer of light amidst the dark chaos. It was Karen, my mother's best friend, the woman who had been as much a part of our family as my own mother. "Is she in there?" Karen asked breathlessly, her familiar eyes brimming with compassion. Before I could respond, she enveloped me in a profound hug, her warmth seeping into my bones, and I felt a flicker of comfort amidst the storm. "She needs us," she said, pulling me back slightly, her hands resting on my shoulders. "You have to fight for her, all of you. She would do the same." I could feel a surge of determination rising against the tide of fear, but then it hit me. What if it was too late? What if we didn't get the chance? Just as despair threatened to consume me whole, the doors to the ICU swung open again, and a team of doctors emerged, their faces grim. "Family of Mrs. Harper," one of them called, their tone heavy, and my heart raced dangerously. "I am her daughter," I stepped forward instinctively, but before I could ask what was happening, I saw a shadow pass across my father's face. What was he thinking? Did he fear for her too? Was he feeling something other than himself for the first time in years? I realized this wasn't just about me anymore, this was about her, a woman as broken as she was filled with love, and perhaps, just perhaps, about the family we could still be, and that was when everything tilted on its axis. The heart-wrenching realization settling in your paths forward were fraught with uncertainty, but an opportunity lay before us, an opportunity we might never have again. Your mother is fighting for her life, the doctor continued gravely, and we need to know, are you prepared to support whatever decision she made about the care and treatment she wishes to receive? Time seemed to stop as I pinpointed my father's eyes boring into mine, and just like that, the unspeakable question hung heavy in the air. Would we be able to coalesce and protect the fragile hope that my mother's spirit still harbored? Would we do it together? I held my breath, the weight of the world pressing down upon me as I braced for the answers that awaited. The fluorescent lights above us hummed persistently, amplifying the silence that enveloped the waiting area, thick and suffocating. I could feel my heart pounding, the rhythm a frantic reminder of everything at stake. My father, Darlene, and Jonathan stood together, but instead of unity, there was a palpable distance between us, each one of us caught in our own spirals of fear. The doctor's gaze shifted between us as if waiting for a signal, for a consensus that felt beyond our reach. The room buzzed with a low undercurrent of anxiety, and I caught Darlene reaching for my hand, her own trembling slightly. Preparing for a decision, the doctor repeated, as though he hadn't seen the barriers we had built around ourselves. Your mother needs to know she has your support. That it was an unfair burden to place on us in this moment of chaos. The decision weighed heavily on my shoulders, yet it was more complicated than that. My heart was caught between a yearning to cling to the remnants of hope and the gut-wrenching fear of what lay beyond this moment. What did she want? I finally asked, my voice breaking the tense silence, the question a desperate plea for guidance. The doctor regarded me carefully, compassion etching his features. We are not privy to her wishes right now. That's where you must come in. Does she have a living will? Are there directives we should be aware of? I felt Jonathan's grip on my hand tighten, grounding me as I grappled for clarity in the emotional wreckage. Just when I thought the weight of expectation would consume me whole, Darlene spoke softly. We need to be for her what she's always been for us. We owe her that. Her words ignited something within me, a flickering flame that pierced through my numbness. Then we have to fight for her. I whispered, though my own uncertainty loomed like a specter at the edge of my resolve. Fight how? My father asked, his voice a mixture of vulnerability and indignation, as if the concept of fighting was alien to him now. What can we even offer her, all of us? I looked up at him, my heart racing as I faced the man who had caused me as much pain as he had love. We can offer her our presence, our support, I said, finding strength in my conviction. We can choose to believe that she's still fighting, that she still wants to be here with us. That he opened his mouth as if to counter my words, but then I saw something shift in his eyes, a flicker of recognition. The years of silence and echoes of lost battles faded momentarily as he seemed to understand that our mother had always wanted family above all else. All right, he said finally, his voice softening. Let's decide together then. I don't want to lose her either. As the doctor nodded, conveying a sense of cautious encouragement, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Maybe this was the beginning of something Newa collective will forged in the fires of shared grief. As the four of us huddled together, I grasped Jonathan's hand tighter, grateful for his presence amidst our turmoil. Together, we formed a circle of embrace and commitment, a pact to navigate the storm ahead. Just then, there was a commotion near the entrance of the hospital. A pair of voices, contentious yet familiar, drifted towards us. They were barely noticeable at first, but grew louder and more distinct as the figures entered the waiting area. My breath hitched when I recognized the blonde-haired silhouette at the forefront. Why are we just waiting here? This is insane. Clara, my estranged sister, burst into the room, panic etched on her face. Behind her was her husband, someone I hadn't expected to see, someone who had been absent from our family's narrative for so long. The atmosphere shifted palpably, my father's expression morphed into confusion, and Darlene's hand instinctively clutched my arm tighter. Clara hadn't been part of our story for years. Her departure had cracked our family into fragments, each of us scattered and broken. But now, she was here, a ghost from the past resurfacing right when we needed to rally together the most. What happened? She demanded, looking around as if searching for answers in our shared sorrow. My heart raced, I had no idea how to respond. Mom is in intensive care, I managed to choke out, the words tasting bitter and foreign on my tongue. Clara's body went rigid, her newly painted nails biting into her palms. In the hospital? Why didn't anyone call me? I had no idea. There was no time, I replied, brimming with resentment. You've been gone. You're the one that chose to walk away. A stark silence stretched between us, thick with past grievances and unresolved anger. Behind me, I felt my father shift uncomfortably as if he was witnessing a train wreck unfolding in slow motion. Enough. He finally yelled, the tension bubbling over. This isn't the time for blame. Your mother needs us. We've all made mistakes. It's time to come together. That single proclamation jolted me back to the present. My gaze had inadvertently caught Jonathan's, and I could see the layer of unspoken questions swirling in his eyes. Was he worried about Clara's presence too? The doctor, witnessing our familial upheaval, stepped forward with a concerned expression. We need to stay focused here. Your mother is unstable. We have to make decisions urgently. In that instant, all distractions faded away. I could feel the weight of my mother's love surrounding us, urging us to push beyond our divisions. Perhaps Clara's arrival could be a catalyst for reconciliation. A surge of hope coursed through my veins. Could we finally become the family we had failed to be in the past? As the four of us circled around Clara in quiet determination, a profound reckoning began to settle over me. Yet beneath that resolution was a stirring uncertainty, a nagging fear that this moment of unity could swiftly unravel in ways we couldn't foresee. Just as I steeled myself for what was to come, a distant yet familiar sound filled the hallways. The steady, rhythmic beeping of machines, followed by an unsettling silence, a heartbeat that felt almost like a clock ticking down the seconds, each beat echoing a heavier burden we'd chosen to lift together. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket, the noise slicing through the tension like a knife, stirring the air with a sense of foreboding. I fished it out, my hands trembling as I glanced at the screen. A text message, marked with urgency, we need to talk. It's about your mother. I froze, heart racing, as dread washed over me. Whoever sent this message had the potential to alter everything. I could feel it in my bones. My breath caught in my throat, fear coiling tightly within me. This was no longer just about fighting for my mother's life. A deeper, darker truth lurked in the shadows of our shared past, waiting for us to confront it. What did they want to tell me, and how far would it stretch our fragile web of hope? With trembling fingers, I hesitated, the chilling weight of uncertainty bearing down heavily. I could feel Jonathan's concerned gaze upon me. There was something waiting just beyond the horizon, a revelation that might shatter the fragile moment we had formed. My heart raced as I hit reply, bracing myself for the storm that was yet to come. The air felt heavy with expectation, each breath I took drawing in the tension that bound us together and pulled us apart. I held my phone tightly, fingers trembling against the glass as I saw the dots dancing in the message bubble above. Someone was typing back. It felt as if the world around me suspended in time, each ticking second stretching long and thin, as if the universe was holding its breath. My father stood beside me, his expression a mixture of uncertainty and concern. Clara's presence loomed like an unwelcome shadow, the familiar argument still hanging unsaid between us. Darlene was visibly shaken, her brow furrowed as she tried to process everything that had just unfolded. And Jonathan remained steadfast, his grip on my hand offering a fragile grounding as I stood teetering on the edge of chaos. Who is it? Darlene asked, her voice just above a whisper. The urgency crackled in the air as I opened my mouth to respond, but the door to the waiting room swung open once again, and a familiar nurse popped her head in, concern etched across her face. Everyone needs to gather, she said, her tone urgent yet steady. We need to make a decision concerning your mother's care options. Before I had a chance to protest, she motioned for us to follow her further down the corridor. My limbs felt heavy as I followed, the gravity of the situation weighing down on me in waves of anxiety. But that singular text message hung in the back of my mind like a dangerous question mark, a blaring alarm in the midst of uncertainty. As we approached a private conference room, I felt the intensity building. The air was thick with expectation as we all shuffled in, glancing around the room as if answers might spring from the sterile walls. I caught a quick look from Jonathan. He was here, still alongside me, but I could see the worry glimmering in his eyes. The doctor stood at the forefront, ready to unpack the gravity of our situation. I forced myself to focus, to listen, yet the echoes of old wounds and unresolved resentments lingered just beneath the surface. Your mother's condition has worsened, the doctor began. Each word felt like a blow, a reminder of a truth I was desperate to shy away from. We need your input on the intervention options ahead, particularly if she has expressed any wishes for end-of-life care. It's imperative to determine how to proceed swiftly. His voice softened and compassionately, every eye fell on me. The air turned electric, 1,000 unspoken concerns suffocating the room. I could feel my pulse thundering, each heartbeat clashing against my ribs as I attempted to gather my thoughts. My mother, this beautiful spirit who had loved me through everything, was lying in that room, needing us to coalesce now more than ever. As I stood frozen, I felt a tightening around my heart, a ball of raw emotion threatening to break loose. All the years of anger towards my father and resentment towards Clara flooded my mind, blurring the lines of what I was meant to feel in this appointed moment. What if we just let her go? Clara's voice sliced through the tension, abrupt and unyielding. Maybe it's time to consider that. There it weighs an anchor, her words unsheathing an old wound still dripping with emotion. I turned to face her, anger surging within me. How can you say that? Because you've distanced yourself from this family doesn't mean we should abandon her now. Don't act like you have all the answers. You barely know her, it's not the same. She shouted back, each accusation punctuated with the sorrow of old battles. But beneath that, fear crept into her voice, or perhaps it was the dread of navigating the uncertainty we all faced. Enough. My father's voice thundered, arresting both our exchanges, ushering a breathless silence into the room. This isn't the time for blame. He paused, his brow furrowing as he studied all of us. Your mother made choices for us. And it's time we consider her wishes. The room felt charged. There lay the risk of unraveling the fragile layers of our fractured family. What does she want? I whispered, my voice barely audible, though. The question echoed in my soul. Does anyone really know? At that moment, memories of my mother's laughter and vibrant spirit flooded my consciousness, memories I was terrified of losing forever. I wanted to fight for that, to hold on to our family in moments of uncertainty, but the enormity of the choices ahead pressed against me like an immovable weight. Darlene stepped forward, breaking the silence once more. Mom loved us fiercely. She always fought for us. Her voice quivered, filled with courage as she exuded a sense of warmth and conviction that I fed off of. We owe it to her to discuss what she would want. If she were able to make this decision, what would she say? Think back to the meals, the stories, those moments that told us how much she cherished our family, Jonathan suggested gently. It's already woven into the fabric of who we are. I nodded, my heart racing as if casting out the threads of our past could help illuminate answers in our present. She wanted us to be a family, I murmured, my resolve strengthening as I thought of her soft voice guiding us through daily meals, shaping our memories through love. Mom would want to hold on. This is what family means, it's fighting together. Clara's expression shifted from resentment to hesitant understanding as she finally processed the sentiments written across my face. I didn't mean. She trailed off, the fierceness wavering, allowing space for something else. Vulnerability. That we all stood there together, the remnants of our past loomed in visible chaos, yet now suffused within the silent possibility of what could still be. Together, we can show her she's not alone, Jonathan said quietly, his eyes kindling with warmth that sparked hope. My heart sank and soared at this thought all at once, and in that moment, my phone buzzed again. I glanced at it, barely able to breathe as another message came through. Without thinking, I opened it, light illuminating the room. It was from the same sender, "Meet me in the hospital cafeteria." "Urgent, who is it?" Darlene asked tentatively, her brow knitting together again as we all peered at the message in my hands. "I don't know," I replied slowly, drawn in by the tinny urgency in the words. "But it feels important." "Then let's go," Jonathan said firmly. "Wait." Clara called out, her voice breaking through the weight of anticipation in the room. "Don't leave without letting us know what you discover." "We'll be here, ready to fight regardless of what happens," that I nodded, appreciating her newfound strength as we navigated the fragile web of our family's connection. It felt strange, yet formative, igniting something precious, something we could nurture, care for, and protect together. With Jonathan by my side, I stepped out of the room and headed down the long corridor toward the cafeteria, my heart racing but my mind clear. Whatever awaited me might harbor the key to something monumental, an answer to not just my mother's fight, but the intertwined paths we would forge as a family, perhaps beginning again amidst the heartache, grief, hope, and redemption. As we reached the cafeteria, the world opened in front of us, filled with noise and bustle, and for a brief instant, I felt the surrender of anxiety wash over me. No matter what news I was about to encounter, I promised myself a new fight, a changed approach. I yearned to embrace the connections that had once felt frayed and lost, but then, as my eyes scanned the room, they landed on a familiar face I never thought I would see again, an old colleague of my mother's, eyes sharp with a knowing look. Determination glistened in his jaw. I took a deep breath, my thoughts clear as I prepared for whatever revelation lay ahead, and as the cacophony of life surged around me, it became crystal clear. Sometimes, in the search for healing, the past awakens to help shape the future. As I caught my breath and prepared to step forward, the weight of burdens outside faded, leaving behind something powerful, a whispered promise: together, we would fight to heal. Because, after all, love is a choice. And knowing that, I took the first step toward our family's second chance. "Let's find that path," I whispered, as I moved closer.